Really loud. Okay, we've got a good crowd here, Chandler. I want to turn this around and let them tell you how much they like the movie.
Oh my God, that's so sweet.
Thank you so much for staying up late with us and sharing this movie. It's so beautiful, just so moving, and it's a great movie. So I'm going to ask you just a few questions, and then people are going to come up. I'm also going to make a little thing here. If you're at home and you want to ask a question, there's a few people who are watching from home. I'm not sure how they were able to see the movie because we weren't screening it, so I'm not sure what they're doing. But so
it's around if you know the right way to find it.
Put your name in chat if you've got a question, I guess. But I'm going to ask you a few questions. They're going to come up and ask questions. They're already queuing up because they're so.
Great.
So my first question is simply, when are people in the U.S. going to get to see this? Have you heard? Is there news?
Yeah, I'm hoping that it's going to be in late March, with like a kind of a small theatrical run. That's my dream.
Okay, good.
So as soon as I have an exact info, then I will 100% let everybody know. But I really want US audiences to be able to see it.
Yeah. The other thing is, I know that you worked in a video store, and I just want to hear about how much of this came from that, and if you could share with someone.
Yeah, I worked at Blockbuster in high school for maybe 2 or 3 years. Very similar to Lawrence. I was super stoked about getting 10 free rentals a week, so I abused that liberally. But yeah, a lot of the stuff that happens in the movie happened to me. I did have to wear a sash and walk around asking everyone if they wanted to watch Shrek, or pre-sell or pre-buy Shrek. There was so many deals, and like it was this kind of very corporate version of this passion that I had for cinema. So anytime like one customer would indulge me and I could go on my I'd always be like, oh, you should rent the Trois Couleurs trilogy and here's what I think, and blue actually is better than blanc, and people would be like, okay, that's great. So anyways, but yeah, I mean, that was kind of especially my senior year of high school, which was kind of an interesting experience to kind of be getting to spend time with like actual adults for the first time in your life, but you're still in high school, but like everything's kind of on the precipice for you. And so it was an interesting time, I guess.
Okay. I mean, I have one more question just because I already know the answer, and I don't think anyone's going to ask, but it was in the Q&A that you did in Cleveland. And I just was reminded of it when I was watching the film. I just want to ask about it. But there's a long line, and I want them to ask questions, even though I'd love to sit here and talk to you over coffee for 3 hours. I think I remember somebody asked you about the voices from the movies.
Oh yeah.
Talk about that.
Yeah. So all the scenes where he's watching, like Full Metal Jacket in the back room of the video store, or Spartacus when he's masturbating, or the Saturday Night Live, the Hanukkah song. It was very challenging because I wanted to hear the audio from that film. We couldn't visually show it on screen because it would have cost like $20,000, per movie. But I wanted to recreate it, so I was like, okay, I think I can get around this if I sort of write sort of sound-alikes of like the dialogue, like things that sound like they could be in Full Metal Jacket or would like evoke Spartacus. And then I got my friends to record that in ADR, and I got it sound designed, so I kind of constructed this sort of like sonic landscape. And then the Hanukkah song, I wrote a Hanukkah song parody, and that my brother, who does like a kind of decent Adam Sandler impression, sang. Yeah, but that was really fun to recreate.
Right, that makes me so happy. Okay, we're going to turn it over to these people. If you have questions, just line up and please say your name so she knows who you're talking to. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Duane. This is so exciting.
Oh, it's so great to have you.
Hello, I'm Daniel.
Hi.
I'm in the writing track. I just had a couple questions for you about your script. How long did it take you to get the first draft done?
I wrote the first draft in a month. Kind
Oh,
of because of this grant that was available in Canada called the Talent to Watch grant, where you could get $125,000 for your first feature. And I found out that I was eligible for it. And I was trying to make this other movie happen for about 3 years, and it was just like cost too much money and just never seemed. So I was like, okay, I got to pivot. So like, what's a movie that I could make for $125,000? That would kind of something I could it could be smaller scale, take place mostly in one location, sort of treat it like going back to film school and just getting to write something that just sounded like my voice. Because at that time, I'd never really directed or written anything that made anything as a filmmaker that was like personal to me. So yeah, it took about a month to write the first draft. First I kind of worked off an outline. I'm really into kind of like save the cat method of screenwriting and kind of working off, like those sort of building block like beat sheets and stuff, and I find that's helpful for me. And then I kind of wrote a very exhaustive first outline in a Word doc on a Google Doc, and then kind of transcribed that into final draft, and then that kind of became the first draft of the script.
oh, awesome. How many times did you revise the script then?
Oh God, like probably 50 times. I think there's like 50 drafts of it, maybe more. I kind of wrote it and rewrote it over the course of about 3.5 years before I went to camera with it. And then, of course, once we were actually about to shoot it, a bunch of things changed. You have to like collapse locations or cut characters or reconfigure scenes, so and then in the edit, there's like 4 or 5 scenes we cut like the first week of the edit, and stuff that happens in the script on like in the third act that then happens in the first act, and kind of shifting things around. So, and also my like it's still a very talky, long dialogue driven movie, but a lot of the scenes, if you can't believe it, were even longer. So I think in the edit was the biggest lesson I learned was just how to like scale back my own writing and just take dialogue away.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Adam, also in the writing track. And my question is regarding your scripts for I Like Movies is you covered areas of kind of darker themes and you have great comedy. I want to know what was your process of finding a good balance between those two in your scripts?
That's a really great question. I felt like I didn't know that it was getting so dark until the editing stage, and it feels like I kind of just wrote like the script that I wanted, and then when we were actually going into the edit, me and my editor were kind of realizing like, oh, this like really shifts tones. Like it kind of like starts off like super bad, and then all of a sudden it gets into kind of more of like a more really quite dramatic kind of heavy like teen movie, and then it kind of ends as Ladybird, so it feels like it has these strange like kind of episodes. Not that I'm comparing to those masterpieces, of course, but yeah, I think for me just I think that was the fear that I wouldn't be able to sustain that, or like you couldn't have a movie that had like jokes about Shrek and then also like a panic attack scene. And then I think there's like, or could this movie sustain like a character having like a 5-minute monologue where they're just talking to the camera? But I think that we just kind of trusted that hopefully we could get away with it because it felt like it was landing and it felt right to us. But I think it's always important. Like I love comedy, and I always want to work in like a sort of comedic space. So it was really important to me to like, even in really heavy moments, like find comedic performances or feelings or beats in the scenes to get us out of those, or like how to take us out of the monologue scene and into like a joke with the morning announcements or something. Like I think for me that was like a helpful way to sort of navigate things.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cameron. I'm in the producing track, and the last dude actually just asked my question, so now I got to think. I'm actually going to kind of rephrase this question a little bit. Is you did make a tonal shift in the writing, but how does that relate to your directing? How did it translate on screen from the script to screen?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it still felt like the same movie. I guess that's what it is. Like the tone still feels constant, even if there's like these kind of big emotional swings. And I think as long as the actors are all in the same movie, you know, constantly like on a scene by scene level, then you can sort of get away with things like a little bit wildly careening. At least that's my hope. Um, so I think I just tried to have faith in the actors that even if, you know, even if they're, yeah, for instance, like the panic attack scene, like, yeah, it's hard to watch, but it's also kind of like pathetic and sad. He's in his polo shirt, he's kind of at the other side of a door, the mom's giving him advice about like Wilson the volleyball and Castaway. So I think there's still like these little moments of levity even when things get kind of heavy and serious. And it's interesting because I've watched this movie now with an audience like many times, and even after the panic attack or the Alanis monologue where, which is quite heavy, Lawrence is like, well, why didn't you call the police? And then Alanis like, are you like a fucking idiot? And it's interesting how the audience always laughs at that moment. So I think there's still like lines and beats that when you watch it with an audience, you're like, oh wow, it's still, people are still laughing, even though this still feels really serious and sad. So um yeah, I think it's like on a micro level, hopefully you can always dig for comedic elements, even if that's not exactly the whole tone of the scene or point in the movie there.
Perfect. Well, you killed it. It was an awesome movie. So
Oh, that's so nice. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name's Caleb. I'm hoping to be in the post-production track. My question was kind of briefly talked about, but I'm just going to say that your film was I've probably not related to a movie so much in my entire life as this one.
Thank you. Me too.
My initial question was because it's so relatable, what made you want to make this kind of film where, I guess, a coming of age kind of film where the main character starts off as an asshole but then learns about himself. So what made you want to start out with this idea to make for a film?
Yeah, that's a great question. He always felt like an asshole to me, even when I was writing him, like he was kind of unbearable. But then I think like all of like people that you love and care about, I wanted like him to still succeed and be good and learn something at the end. I guess for me, I was thinking about, like I definitely see myself in like him a lot and the Atlanta character too. And I feel like a lot of the process of writing the movie and making it was kind of like my 16-year-old self talking to my 35-year-old self. And it kind of this idea of like, if you met the version of yourself that you were in high school, like what would you think of that person and what would that person think of you? Um, so so yeah, but I also kind of wanted to unpack this idea of like toxic film bros because I might know one or two of those guys, and I had I was curious like what were they like in high school, and if there was any way to like have done some kind of early intervention on them, there'd be a way to kind of set them on a path of healing before it's too late, like if they actually learned that they should ask people questions or like learn anything other than just knowing about movies. And I guess for me, like, yeah, I obviously film has played such an important, like it's like the source of all my passion in the way I think about the world. And there's been moments in movies that have felt like more real, impactful to the fabric of my life than even just like actual moments I've had in my real life. um but you know uh I think that film can also be kind of dangerous for people, and there's something weird about like not having empathy for real people in your life but being able to have them for characters in a movie. So I guess I was just like interested in that. And then I love coming of age movies, but I always feel like a lot of teen characters in coming of age movies are like super well adjusted and normal and cute and adorable and actually don't have any real problems, and like you're rooting for these sort of bland audience surrogates that just like are perfect human beings, and like we don't need a whole movie for them to learn the life lesson. Like they've already learned it and they've already won the genetic lottery and they're like beautiful and charming and self-actualized. And it's like, why do I want to watch a movie about this person? So I like the idea of making coming of age movie where like the person actually doesn't learn anything until the last like 10 minutes of the movie. And I think I'm always drawn to writing characters where it's like they're refusing to learn the lesson. Like it's so obvious why they're messed up and they've taken everything away from them and they're still like doubling or tripling down on their own like narcissism and like self-involvement and like inability to change, and they just want to sit in that pain. And I guess maybe that's just because I relate to that, but I think that's interesting and compelling. But it was really hard. I mean, I was worried a lot of the time when I was developing it, like, are people going to be able to stand this person? And he's not for everyone, but I love him. And I think Isaiah Letnin, who plays Lawrence, did such an incredible job of like imbuing that character with so much vulnerability. And I think in the hands of like a lesser actor, the movie would just be like completely unwatchable, but he really makes you care about that character and sort of root for them.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Addie, and I'm also in the post-production track. And because this was your first feature, right? Yeah, so I was just gonna ask what like lessons you learned from this, like what did you learn from making a feature that you will implement in the future with other projects that you do?
Oh yeah. Well, that's a great question. I would say, I think Greta Gerwig says this actually, that like you only have a chance to make like a first feature once and you only have a chance to like not know. So there's something actually kind of nice and empowering that you only realize later when you've actually done it, that like you're coming from things from sort of a more pure creative place because you haven't learned like the industry standard way of doing something, or like so. And I think this movie was like incredibly challenging. Like we made it on a micro budget. We shot it in the middle of the third wave of the pandemic, like before there were vaccines. So the environment every day was like, we could die today. We could kill all of our loved ones, but we're here like making this movie. And that made things kind of like fraught, but also sort of like the stakes were so high that the movie was like a way to channel like a lot of, I think, creative ambition and, stuff into the movie as well. But I would say like lessons that I learned, like, you have to fight like every day. I think to even get a movie made, like there are these things that like every day there's going to be so many obstacles and there's so many things that happen on the shoot that like felt like impossible. Like, I had to recast like a main actor like halfway through the shoot. Locations like dropping, so and then in the post process, there were so many moments where I wanted to give up and like I didn't think I would ever finish the film. So even just finishing the movie is like a triumph. But then I think also just like always knowing that like you have to stick up for yourself, you have to stick up for the integrity of your story. Like you're all responsible for the images that are in the movie. So if there's something that you feel like isn't right, you have to voice your opinion, even if it means someone's gonna get mad at you because now they have to like go back to Taco Bell and get like 6 more gorditas, because the or like if you really want like something that like the picture vehicle, like if you want like a vintage PT Cruiser, like yeah, maybe you're the one who has to go on Facebook Marketplace at like 4 a.m. and message 19 people to get the car of your dreams, but like it will be worth it. So I think that's the thing that I learned, was like all those kind of sacrifices and like attention to detail, like it really, really does matter. And I think people appreciate it on screen.
Awesome. Well paid off. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name's Chandler. I'm going in the directing track.
Oh my God, your name is Chandler too?
Yeah, crazy small world, right? I really liked your music videos that we watched for like leading up to this, and I was just wondering.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, I was just wondering what it may be something that you learned from that you were able to apply to making your feature film.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Chandler, it's great to meet you. Yeah, I mean, I learned how to be like a filmmaker through like low budget music videos, and I think that experience really was my film school, because before I made those, like I'd never seen a camera before. Like the only filmmaking experience I had was like making, student films in high school that were like worse than the Rejects Night video that happens at the top. Like truly that's a masterpiece compared to what I was making. Um so and me and my directing partner Jeremy, like we at the beginning, pretty much for all of it, like we did everything ourselves, like whether it was like making blood squibs or stunts or casting or location scouting. Like we really did it all, and I think it was like so invaluable, like to learn not only like the independent production model, but then also just kind of like getting very scrappy and gritty with like trying to stretch like that pup guilt trip video that costs $3,000, and we're like driving around the woods looking for like like a shack that we could use to make like, and just throwing children in there, and like yeah, it was pretty crazy, but I think that was just so helpful to kind of learn things on like a very granular cellular kind of level of like how you truly make something so independent from nothing. And then I think I applied that to obviously making this movie with my producers, who were really brilliant and resourceful, and it allowed us to kind of like me to feel confident, like I know how to do this with absolutely nothing.
Well, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Allie. I'm in the editing track. And my question was, we had read a Q&A in preparation for this, and in that you had talked about how you had spent the decade from 25 to 35 finding your voice. And I was wondering how you went about doing that, and also what of your films or projects reflect that voice the most.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, a great question. I think that I'm still finding it, obviously, like everyone is. But I guess this film definitely made me feel like, oh, if I'm just like entirely authentic to the things that I find funny and interesting, or like weird, stupid jokes that I have, like him like fast rewinding 3 tapes that all pop up at the same time, like sort of like a boner, like that will like translate with audiences. But and I guess just following my own instincts, and so much of my voice I think has been shaped a lot by the filmmakers that I love, and like the kinds of like art and stories and tone that I fell in love with. But I think now I'm trying to step outside of that and not just be like, oh, I'm making this as like an homage to this, or this reminds me of this kind of movie, and going, okay, actually you have to like look at what's in front of you and just be present, and like actually just look and be aware of what you're actually shooting. Because I think sometimes when I'm directing, I get like caught up in this, like, how come this doesn't look like the shot from The Shining that I put in my shot list and storyboards? It's like, well, why don't you just make a shot that you find beautiful and interesting in the moment, and be alive and present to that, instead of like feeling like you can't be a filmmaker. Because I think for a long time I put the filmmakers I admired on such a high pedestal that it kind of made me feel like psychologically scared to think that I could make my own work. So I think that, yeah, it takes a lot I think you have to try and fail. You have to give yourself permission to make bad art. That's really important. and like try to make it in like a free creative space where you can experiment and not put any kind of burden or pressure on yourself. Like, don't be like imagining your Sundance premiere as you're shooting like the first second of your film. Like, just stay alive and like concentrate on what's in front of you, and then try and fail and just make a whole bunch of bad movies, because you'll learn so much more from making things than you'll ever do it from not making things or talking about the things you want to make. Like, I think it's like filmmaking is just a practice, and the more you try and make things, like maybe there's maybe the movie's bad, but if it has one scene or one moment that feels real and authentic, that like really feels like you just have to like latch on to that and go, okay, what about that felt real? What about that worked? And just constantly be kind of questioning and interrogating your own voice, I think.
Thank you. I love that.
Thank
Hi, I'm Fox. I'm going into the directing track, and
Oh,
I was wondering. Well, throughout the film, Florence kept reminding me of characters like George Costanza, who are like really hard to watch, and you're like, oh, I really don't really like this guy that much. But I, as an audience member, I was really enjoying watching him. And I was having a lot of fun watching him like dig that hole deeper and deeper. I was wondering if you could speak to how you went about writing and directing a character like that, who's kind of hard to like, but while trying to make it fun for the audience to watch a character like that.
yeah, that's really interesting to think about. I feel like I didn't write Lawrence, like Lawrence wrote himself, or just never stopped talking to me, and I was kind of like taking dictation. And for whatever reason, I don't know what part of me, like, but his voice was just like really instant and like apparent to me. And like I feel like I almost like don't want to take any responsibility for him. Because he's his own creation. And sometimes there'd be really surprising moments. Like I remember writing one scene and then all of a sudden he was like, oh yeah, well that's because my dad committed suicide. And I was like, what? He did? So yeah, it's interesting. I've also had people kind of ask me like if Lawrence is on the spectrum, and that's not something that I necessarily intended, but I think that's a cool interpretation if that's how people want to view the character. But I think also, I guess in relationship to your question, like I think it's really important not to judge your characters harshly or try to make them likable or sympathetic. Like I think you always have to be on the side of your characters and be and that's certainly something also for the actor who's playing them to really feel like, you know, in Lawrence's mind, like all of his you know, actions are like valid, and he probably isn't taking responsibility for things, or when he's sort of foisting like happiness on that couple, like he thinks they're really going to love it, like he knows it's a great movie. So I think that it's just about like allowing people to have flaws. I think the question of like likability is always like very prescient in screenwriting, and I think people always worry that characters aren't likable, but like I don't want to see like pretty perfect people, I guess. You know, that doesn't remind me of like the humans that I actually know and love, and I think it's more satisfying to see a flawed character actually change and grow. So I think that's the way I always thought about it. And I guess for him, like I think he has a really strong foil in Alana and like some of the other people in his life, and he obviously does have to have some responsibility for his actions. So hopefully it's enough that, you know, like it's, I think in another version of the script, you know, he would make the year-end video and he would get a standing ovation or slow clap, you know, as he screened it, and he would get into NYU, and you know, him and Matt would like patch things up again, and Alana would go to the prom with him and stuff, you know. And I just kind of didn't want to play into any of those like conventions of sort of what like a mainstream teen movie like has to be.
Right. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Chandler. My name is
Hi.
Lee. I am a senior in the post-production track. And my question about the movie is about the setting. And so the movie took place in the early 2000s, which you don't see a lot of, especially movies nowadays. And it made me feel really nostalgic for that time. And so I'm wondering what kind of tricks or what thoughts went into the production to make it feel like it took place during that setting.
Another great question. I'm sorry I keep saying that, but that's a really great question. Yeah, I guess for me that was when I was a senior in high school, so it just felt like natural to me to set it then, because that's when I was working at Blockbuster. And I'm from Burlington, Ontario, so I also wanted to kind of make the film like hyperbolically Canadian and sort of not disguise it. I think a lot of times in Canadian movies, like we don't want to make it like look or feel too Canadian because it like could alienate someone. But for me, like the pleasure of any movie is like the hyper specificity of its setting and time, you know, and place. So you really feel like you're there. And you know, in American movies they do that all the time, but it's so rare that we do that here. So I kind of just wanted to be like, oh, I'm gonna put like you're really gonna be in Burlington, Ontario. You're really gonna feel that like Southern Ontario, like early 2000s culture. So I guess I mean a lot of it came from like the costuming. Like my costume designer, Courtney Mitchell, was like absolutely brilliant, and we literally scoured like, you know, vintage shops and, you know, Salvation Armies that were actually in Burlington. And I found some of my old clothes from high school. The video camera that they shoot on is the actual video camera that I made movies on in high school. My dad had to like, he had like loaned it to this tailor and he had to like go back and get it. You know, like picture vehicles I think do a lot to kind of place things. You know, in your location scouting it's really imperative I think that you look for places that feel right. It was the pandemic, so a lot of things were kind of more available. And then the biggest thing was just how am I going to construct this like vintage video store when vintage video stores don't exist anymore. And someone told me about this abandoned Blockbuster in Northern Ontario that had been sitting vacant for like 10 years. And I found out who the property manager was because I called a pet store that was in the same plaza, and then they gave me their number. So then I convinced this guy to like meet me there. And then when he opened the store, um, all of the shelving and like computers and TVs that you see in the movie and were all still there. Like it just no one had ever taken any of that stuff out. And he was like, for him it like meant nothing, but for me it was like the greatest thing that had ever happened, like this gift from God. So I convinced him to like literally meet me in like a dark alleyway and like I handed him like an envelope full of cash and he handed me like a key to the store, and we were both like this never happened. And then I took a cube truck and we filled it with all the props that we needed for the store. We couldn't shoot there because the ceiling was like caving in, and I think we were all gonna die of asbestos poisoning. So we just like kind of ransacked the store, and then we installed that in this kind of empty thrift store that we found. So yeah, I mean, and then also, you know, there's like a lot of like those weird t-shirts that have like cows on them. Like that's a weird Canadian ice cream company that does these weird cow parodies of like culture. But like in high school, you know, when I in high school, like I wore those all the time, and so did my mom. So I literally like called them, and then they gave me a bunch of free t-shirts and stuff. So it's just like I kind of was this fun fact-finding mission of like retracing things from my youth and like trying to get as many real world things that I remember from my childhood to be in the movie as possible.
Yeah, that's awesome. You guys pulled it off. So
Thank you so much.
so much.
How are you holding up, Chandler? You okay? We got about 4 more people in line. Does that sound?
Oh yeah, I'm totally great. This is so nice.
Hi, my name is Hazel. I love how naturalistic your dialogue is, and I kind of wanted to ask, like, if you've got like just your process with writing dialogue and like how much you rely on improv and like how you get your actors to like give that naturalistic performance.
Thank you. That's very kind. There wasn't a lot of improv. It was pretty heavily scripted, and I think whenever I write dialogue, I always just try to insert as many ums and ahs and likes into the script because I find that's how people actually talk. And to me, that I kind of just prefer writing that way because, you know, I think it's interesting, and I feel like movies don't often talk like that, but that's how everyone I know speaks. So that's part of it. Yeah, I don't know. I think sometimes it feels more like an unconscious process to me when I'm writing dialogue. Like I guess I just try to and I really like that. I think I really like sort of being alone and having characters kind of talk to me and sort of getting into the head of different people and sort of feeling what those characters are feeling and sort of channeling it from the inside out. But I would say if you're interested in sort of naturalistic dialogue writing, like Kenneth Lonergan is like the master of it. He's like a writer director. His name's Kenneth Lonergan. And if you like this film, he is like the most incredible naturalistic dialogue writer I've ever heard, and he inspires me so much. He has this movie called Margaret, that Anna Paquin's in it, and it's about a teen girl who like causes a bus accident that kills someone. And then is just kind of like tortured by it, but it's so good. Kieran Culkin from Succession is in it in an early role. Mark Ruffalo's in it, and it's just such a good movie. And his dialogue is so inspiring to me. He also did this movie Manchester by the Sea, and this other film You Can Count on Me. And he's also a playwright. He has this play called This Is Our Youth that Michael Cera was in when he and he's just unbelievable. So I always look at him for like a really good example of like someone who really knows how to make like naturalistic characters in movies sound real.
Thanks.
Hi, Chandler. My name is Emma Breyer. I'm on the beginning stage of the producer track. I've actually taken a recent interest in writing scripts. So I guess tying into that, you said earlier in your writing process for the script, you look towards your younger self and peers. You don't mind me asking you a personal question. What is one piece of advice you would give your younger self in relation to film, and then one piece of advice you would give in relation to just life advice?
Oh, wow. I think my younger self, I think I was like really scared for a long time to make movies because I thought they had to be like perfect, or like thought my first movie had to be like Citizen Kane. And you guys just watched it. It's obviously not as good.
It's very well done. Don't say that.
Close. So I think for me, I wish I'd given myself the permission to just make a bunch of mediocre short films, because I think I would have learned so much from that process and just trying and failing and figuring out what my voice was and like learning from my mistakes and really trying. And I think people think they need like so many resources to make a short film, but really you just need like write a 3-page scene, get the most interesting person you know who's kind of charismatic. They don't have to be a professional actor. They could be like your roommate, or like a really good looking barista at Starbucks, or like, you know, your parents' friend or something. And just think of a scenario, think of a location that you could have access to. Maybe it's even at the school, because like some of the best scenes in movies are just in like very simple rooms or outside or whatever. And I wish I had just kind of tried more and to make just like very simple movies. I think I would have been like really miles ahead. Because I came to filmmaking so late. I was like a journalist when I was really young until I was about 25. And then what else would I say about filmmaking advice? Yeah, maybe just not put so much pressure on myself. Like I think yeah, to like, you know, I think for a long time I was like, I need to make a movie or I'm gonna die, which is probably not a cool way to just like,
Perfectionism, yeah.
walk around in the world. And then also like while making the movie, I was like, I'm never gonna finish this. Or I went through so many weird periods of like existential despair, but like really it's like not the biggest deal in the world. And so I think that was part of it too. And then just general advice. Oh, what would I say? I don't know, drink lots of water. I don't travel is good. Like traveling. One good thing is like knowing what you don't like is just as or knowing what you don't want to be or don't want to do is just as important as knowing what you do want to do. So if it's like you're trying to figure things out, like just knowing that what you hate or what you won't stand for or what makes you unhappy is like really crucial, and like just as much as like actually figuring that out. And I've had so many weird careers and like periods in my life and like things that I did that have nothing to do with film. And I'm really grateful for that, because I think also if you start making movies right away when you're like 20, how can those movies be any good? Like you need to have like very pivotal life experiences and weird lost years and things that happen to you that you can that become the stuff that you then make movies about. So I'm very grateful for like, yeah, this weird period of my life where I was working at Blockbuster, like that became the raw material for a film, or I've had so many times in my life where I've been like broke and lost and heartbroken and confused. And that's always the stuff that I'm writing screenplays about now. And I'm probably still all those things too sometimes too. So yeah, I would just say that like every pivotal thing that you're going through, or periods in your life where you're like lost and confused, and that you'll be grateful when you look back on those experiences, because they're going to really help your art and make you a better artist too. Because like the movie, like if you're not able to be empathetic and connect with people, so much of the job is like staying open and learning how to collaborate with people and really listen. So yeah, that's a big part of filmmaking as well.
I love that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Chandler. My name is Stefano. I'm hoping to be in the directing track. First off, I want to say that your film moved me emotionally. So
Oh my God.
thank you for that.
Thank you. That's like a compliment.
It's actually about your actors, because you had some incredible actors in your film. So I'm curious what your experiences were like directing your actors, and what your tips would be directing actors.
Thank you. Yeah, I felt like I really lucked out. I had such an incredible ensemble, and Romina, who plays Alana, and Isaiah, who plays Lawrence, and Krista, who plays his mom, and Percy, who plays Matt, his friend. Like they were all so wonderful. So were the video store employees, and Lauren P. Got to give it up for Lauren P. Yeah, so I would say like, yeah, it was a really great experience. It was really hard to cast Lawrence because he's such a specific character, and kind of it was really important to me that like, yeah, that he feels like I needed an actor that could kind of carry the whole movie on their back, because not only is he the main character, but he also like never ever stops talking, and he's in almost like every single shot of the movie. So it was like a lot to kind of put on someone. And a lot of young boys who want to be professional actors are kind of like cute and normal, and like didn't necessarily have like the life experience to relate to the character. Or yeah, so it was like a very exhaustive casting search, and I feel like casting, especially for a movie like this, is so pivotal. But yeah, and the work in advice I would have, or just the process of it, like I think it depends, because it's harder. Like if you're trying to attract like a celebrity to be in your movie, sometimes that's really hard, because even if that person says yes, like you won't have access to them. They might be like the kind of star that shows up like the day before you shoot. And for me, like I like to have a really intimate relationship with the actors that I'm working with. Like if it's my own writing, like I want to be able to like watch movies with them, and hang out with them one-on-one in person, like leading up to the filming process. And hopefully there's a rehearsal process where you can actually like have those actors meet each other and spend time together and work on the scenes. And you can do fun things like try and improv moments that aren't in the script as well, which I think people find useful. So yeah, I would say that my advice is like, try and ask them lots of questions. I think actors like that, like, why are you wearing that shirt today? Or like, what happened this morning before the scene? Or what's one of the most embarrassing moments of your life? And that helps, like, you kind of create this like secret language together. And then I think it's like my favorite joy of like filmmaking, as soon as I realized that this was directing actors was like, it's just like talking about fake people like they're real. So I think it's just like, it's your responsibility to kind of have an answer every time they don't understand something that's happening in the scene. And it doesn't even have to be a good answer or true, but it has to be an answer that will make sense to them. And like blocking is something that can be challenging, sometimes they have to like go to the fridge because, but then while they're going to the fridge, they have to like move over here because the camera's there and they're going to hit this light and they're going to be like, why am I moving over there? That doesn't make any sense. My character wouldn't do that. And sometimes instead of seeing those things as like oppositional or an obstacle, and you're just like, oh my God, just move to the fridge. Like it's actually your job to really interrogate that. And sometimes, and if something doesn't feel right to them, it's not worth doing, and sometimes, and I've actually had some of the most fun experiences on set, like actually trying to solve those problems or think about it. And sometimes you change the blocking and it actually becomes something that's more interesting or truthful, by really hearing their instincts about the scene. But I would say like just look for people that you feel comfortable with and that speak the same language as you and that you can actually collaborate with, because I think there's sometimes a temptation to like, oh, let's cast this person like they're on Riverdale or like I don't know. But I think you just have to, it has to be the person that feels the most real and authentic to you. And I remember my friend Matthew saying this to me when I was trying to find Lawrence. Like he was like, it's our job to invent new celebrities too, and it's our job to like create opportunities for people that are never get to be on screen or never get to lead a movie. Or so I think that's also really important. Like if you can discover like a really fresh, interesting person or voice or face, then your movie gets to be part of the thrill of that discovery.
Awesome. That's really great. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mike Roberts. I'm a cinematography student here at UVA.
Oh, cool.
I had a bunch of questions about like lighting and stuff, but I think might be a more important question is just know how you survived until you made your movie.
Like spiritually, emotionally.
I guess I don't know, financially, like did you barista or something? I don't know.
Oh boy. Yeah, I mean I had a whole string of jobs. I've always been like a freelance journalist, arts critic, so I wrote articles. I would still write film reviews sometimes for the Globe and Mail, which is like the kind of like Canada's equivalent of like the New York Times or something. But all kinds of things, like weird catering jobs with my mom. I worked for like 6 months at like a Russian daycare taking care of babies that only spoke Russian. I do some like copy editing sometimes. Now I'm kind of trying to direct commercials and do kind of director for hire gigs. But I could not pay myself when I made this movie. Like I if anything, I put my own life savings into the movie. And actually surviving, like during the pandemic, Canada like gave like unemployment money to people. So I literally like survived on that. But now I think I have to pay it all back because of taxes. So yeah, it's really hard. Like you can't really survive making a living in independent cinema. Like I'll just be totally honest about that. Like any kind of like job like this that I've done, like whether it's been an independent film or music video, short film, not only have I not gotten paid, I've put my own money into it to make it better. And that's just kind of like the realistic way that these things work. And even with this film, like we've sold it in 6 or 7 different countries, and it did really well theatrically in Canada, and we sold it, it's on Netflix in Canada, but we were weirdly like still in debt to our distributor, and we still haven't seen any money from the movie. So it's just like it's very, very hard. Not to discourage anybody, but it's like if you're trying to like get into independent film to be like extremely wealthy, I don't know if that's always possible. Maybe sometimes it happens for people, like if they have a film at Sundance and they become like a Sundance darling or something. But yeah, maybe I can also answer some lighting questions because now I feel very self-conscious.
You have another, Micah? You always have
I always do. Every time.
Last question.
How'd you like how'd the lighting go in that department store? Like, how'd you look like crap?
We didn't have any lighting. Fun fact.
It was literally just department store lighting.
We could only have, we couldn't afford any lights in the department in the store, and if there were these harsh fluorescent lights. So all we did is we devised this like sort of 8 by 8 foot tent of like diffusion to kind of cut the harshness of it. That we just kind of put over top of the lights to kind of make it a little bit more flattering for the actors. But then it also meant that we had to block everything 8 by 8 feet, so the actors could only move in like a weird 8 by 8 foot radius, which was challenging. And yeah, unfortunately with this movie, like all of the locations are under fluorescent lights because it's like the suburbs. So like the video store is fluorescent. Where else? The school had like fluorescent lights. In those classroom scenes, you know, and then sometimes we would luck out with like a very beautiful like Subway sandwiches restaurant or something, which I think shooting by the window kind of became our best friend. So like anytime we could kind of light a scene with the actors in the video store that was like by the front windows, then we could get like a little bit of natural light going. And then the movie was so interior, and I think that was challenging. I was like, oh, there's no scenes outside. So then like that parking lot scene where he cries in the parking lot, talking about his dad to Alana, like originally that was scripted as like the back room of the video store again, but I was like, this is just feeling like the whole movie just takes place in this video store, which I think like 75% of it does, or at least 50%. So then I wrote that to be the parking lot outside at night, just so there could be some more like visual variety, and then that ended up being like kind of a really happy accident because I think it becomes so effective that he's in that little parking lot waiting for his mom at night. But yeah, I'd love to have lights for my next movie. That's my dream.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Hey, we have one more person who's popped up. Is that okay?
Oh yeah, of course.
She's in Toronto, so it's
Oh wow.
no, you're in Toronto, right?
I'm in Toronto.
So I'm explaining that it's almost midnight. Come on.
All right, so I've kind of followed you on like Instagram, Letterboxd for a little bit. So I love seeing you're hilarious. I just want to like how you got the look of this movie. You know, like what references did you use? You know, how did you communicate with like your production designer to get all your everything to work?
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much. That means a lot to me. I mean, I guess the look can be like divided into a couple different ideas. Like I knew I wanted to shoot in the 1:3 Academy aspect ratio. That's like, I really love that kind of little square box feeling, and also that's the aspect ratio that like Citizen Kane and Gone with the Wind and like were filmed in. And I thought there was like kind of a funny irony to this like video store movie looking like an old Hollywood movie. But then that ended up being so helpful because it allowed us to like crop out so much stuff that we couldn't actually afford, like walls we couldn't dress all the way through, or like extras that we didn't have, or like people like just outside the frame in like a mask on their iPhone, during a 2003 set film. The color palette came from me thinking about like Blockbuster's color scheme and how they were like these kind of really harsh like primary colors like blue and yellow, and I was like, oh, I want some kind of like color scheme, and then whatever the color the video store is, then that can dictate like everything else for the other stuff, like in terms of like production design elements, but also like wardrobe, and then that can kind of be like this kind of unifying theme. And then I found this old milk carton, this weird Canadian carton of cream that was like teal and burgundy and like beige, and I don't know why, but I was like, and then I watched like a Pain and Glory, this Almodovar movie, and I noticed that in that movie there's like a kitchen that's like sort of teal, but it's like also like this very rich like blood red burgundy, and I was like, whoa, teal and burgundy are kind of like a dope color combination that I never see anywhere. Maybe the whole color palette for this movie can just look like this milk carton. So then when I had meetings with like my cinematographer, my costume designer, or my production designer, I would just carry these milk cartons around and be like, it's gonna look like this. So then that kind of became like the idea. And then that was really helpful because I think once you have sort of like unifying rules like that, then it's like, okay, well, this is the rule, so we're just gonna follow this. So, you know, the you know, his house is gonna have like those kind of elements of color together, and you know, he's gonna wear some wardrobe that looks like that, and they're mostly in their video store uniforms anyways, and then that's gonna kind of be a good reference. And then I just did a lot of research on like trends, like fashion, watched a lot of old movies and TV shows from that time, and looked at kind of like old magazines and sort of you know, production design elements, but really like the color palette. And then there were a couple movies that were like huge touchstones for us, like Lady Bird and Rushmore, and Adventureland was another really big one. And so I think, you know, I tried to kind of like watch those movies with my cinematographer, and then I made like a ton of like reference images and kind of lookbooks and sort of different reference images for all the different departments. And then things like trends of the big chunky highlights that Shannon has in the video store, that was like from a picture of like Kelly Clarkson on American Idol. So, and I don't know, for me, that like, I'm such a dork about that stuff, and for me that's like really a huge part of the fun of creating something, is kind of like, you know, I also went through my old high school yearbooks and would like share those with people as well. And so it was like a lot of different kind of like textures and sort of references and things to think about, pulled from like real life and stuff that I always just think is interesting or beautiful.
Well, awesome. Thank you. It's a great
Thank
like film, so I appreciate it.
you so much.
Chandler, that was so great. Thank you.
Oh my God, thank you. Everyone asked such incredible questions. And are you guys in Park City?
We're in Orem, which is just kind of down the mountain, over the meadow and through the woods from Park City.
Oh, that's so cool. It was really a joy. Everyone asked really insightful, thoughtful questions, and it means a lot to me that I connected with people, and I can't wait to watch all of your movies. And you obviously have a great teacher.
Well, thank you. They're all very smart. So thank you guys.
Thank you. This was so fun.
Best of luck. You have a lot of fans here in Utah. So
Oh, that's so nice.
Have a great night.
Thank you. Hopefully I can come to Utah sometime, and
yes, when your next film gets into Sundance, let us know, and we'll all be.
All right, have a great evening. Thank you.